Okay. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. My name is Samina Ali Khan, and I'll be your host today, guiding you through this event. I hope you're well, and it is nice to have so many of you back with us, and especially to see the new faces who are joining us rather for the first time today. Welcome to you all. Now, our event today is Public Sector Procurement, which is being delivered to you by Public Sector Executive. The event's going to be packed full of opportunities to acquire sector knowledge, either from our speakers, our delegates that you network with, or of course, the event partners in the digital marketplace. First off, we would like to thank the industry leaders and the experts who are with us today because they're going to share their invaluable insights throughout the day. The content standard that's going to be shared on the PSE365 platform means that all the content is CPD certified. And for every hour of content that you watch live, you will earn a CPD point. You'll also be able to get a certificate. And to do that, all you have to do is email the PSE team. And the address is marketing@cognitivepublishing.com. That's marketing@cognitivepublishing.com. And they will sort it out for you. Now, in addition to CPD, you can give back and feel good through some very friendly competition. Whilst learning today, we have our gamification tools and they'll be active. So you can score points by engaging with the platform's different elements. It's really simple. I'll give you an example. If you join a live session, there's 50 points earned. If you make a connection with another delegate, well, then that's 100 points. If you ask a question in a session or you engage with one of the exhibitors in the digital marketplace, well, then there's another 50. So I'm sure you get the gist. There are lots of points to be won, and it's up to you to have a go. At the end of the event, those who finish in first, second, and third places respectively will get 250, 150, and £100 donated in their name and their organisation to More Trees. So who are More Trees, I hear you ask? Well, they plant a tree for every £1 donated. So it is a great way to do some good and to be in with a chance of winning. All you have to do is to engage. And we've got lots of great content and, of course, lots of other great delegates for you to engage with. Good luck with that. And I hope you enjoy that aspect of today. Now, alongside the several panel discussions on the agenda for you to enjoy today, there are networking opportunities which can be accessed via the speed networking function. And again, that's available throughout today. Collaborating with your colleagues helps to extend the knowledge and the connections that's shared today. These can be accessed at any time, as we say, and ultimately it grows the community at PSE365. And on that note, a quick reminder that our PSE platform has a wealth of resources, on-demand content, and that's alongside the digital marketplace. So plenty of things for you to see and, of course, do. And, of course, we value your views on the event today. So do feel free to share your thoughts. We have a social media hashtag, which is PSE365, and please do use it and let us know how you've enjoyed today. So let's move on with the day. The last 2 years, as many of us know, have been one of the most challenging periods for the public sector, with gross spending on public sector procurement reaching £357 billion in the 21-22 period. That is a rise of 17% on the previous year due to the response to the pandemic. Now, with public procurement accounting for around a third of all public expenditure every year, the Cabinet Office published the Green Paper, Transforming Public Procurement, outlining an ambitious public procurement reform that explored ways to simplify the process, create social value opportunities, and a sustainable supply chain. Now, this was followed by its response after a period of consultation. Additionally, the levelling up ambitions have only reinforced the need for procurement reform, excuse my teeth this morning, highlighting how the current process creates too much red tape for buyers and suppliers, leading to a focus on the wrong activities rather than outcomes, value, and of course, transparency. So today, we hope to address some of the challenges in procurement and look at how we remove the red tape for both suppliers and the public sector. Our first topic for discussion is going to be the importance of social value in procurement. To support the recovery from the pandemic, the social value model highlights the need for a lasting impact on individuals, communities, and of course the environment. And one way of delivering this, whilst levelling up across the country, is to have a diverse supply landscape. But as the public sector continues to face unprecedented challenges and social value becomes an integral element to build back better, how can organisations better understand what this means to the procurement process? Well, to help us explore the importance of social value in this process and the wider benefits to communities, we're delighted to welcome several leaders this morning who are our panel. And they are Charlene McGuinness, who is the Head of Policy Delivery at Crown Commercial Services. We have Mark Francis from NHS England and NHS Improvement. We have Rachel Hartley, who's the Training and Technical Team Lead at Slave Free Alliance. And we have Shariat, who is the Procurement Strategy Manager at Birmingham City Council. So welcome, panel. Nice to have you all with us. And just by way of introduction, let's go round the panel, so to speak, and just have a couple of sentences from you, please, about what you do. So let's start with you, Shariat.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shariat, and I lead on social value with Birmingham City Council. And we have a spend of £1.2 billion a year. So there is lots of opportunities to gain social value on that.
Brilliant. Welcome to you, Shariat. Mark?
Yep. Hi, everyone. So I'm part of NHS England's Sustainable Procurement team, and we're responsible for putting out guidance to the NHS to decarbonise our supply chain.
Welcome to you as well, Mark. And hello, Charlene.
Hi, Sabrina. So my name is Charlene. I work at Crown Commercial Service, which is the largest public buying organisation in the UK. As head of policy delivery, I'm responsible for looking at the regulatory and the policy requirements that we as a public buying organisation have to make sure are incorporated into our agreements, working with our users of our agreements, the public sector organisations, to make sure that their needs are also met in the design and delivery of our agreements.
Brilliant. Nice to have you with us. And Rachel, last but not least.
Good morning. Great to be here. So yeah, I'm team lead at Slave Free Alliance. We're a social enterprise. We partner with organisations of all sizes to improve their response to human rights risks in their operations and their supply chain. And procurement's a big focus for us. We always look at procurement practices, how we can better those, and it really all calls back to that social value.
Great. Lovely to have you with us as well, Rachel. And we are going to start with you. I mean, we use this term a lot, social value. So let's go right back to basics. And can you tell us, what does it mean in procurement, Rachel? What does social value in procurement actually mean?
Absolutely. And I think the first thing we have to think about is this link, right? There is an intrinsic link here. We have to consider how social value is part of procurement and how our procurement practices have an impact on social responsibility and on human rights. So what do we mean by this? We're looking at potentially how human rights can be impacted because of procurement practices or because of how we procure and the way that we conduct our business globally as well. And when we acknowledge that there is a link there, we can see how we may have unintended impacts in our procurement and how we have the power to both perhaps negatively impact livelihoods down our supply chain or in our operations, but also the same power to positively impact those individuals or communities. And then we also have to think how this then links to the environment. This is all very much intertwined. It's a big part of your ESG agenda. Human rights risks and environmental risks are so close. And if we start to look at social value, how we protect human rights, how we uphold them, how we influence them in the way that we procure, it becomes a bigger part of our ESG agenda that then makes it more powerful. So we're really trying to look at this quite holistically. I'm going to see if any of my other panelists want to dive in at this point, but yeah, here we go.
I'm sure they do. I think Mark wants to say something.
Some of those thoughts and comments. I think when we think about the NHS, and the link with climate change, the effects of climate change are well known, and obviously there's an intrinsic link where when those impacts are severe, that therefore people get sicker and are more unhealthy, and therefore there's an impact on the health service itself and the ability for us to deliver that health service. And then when we think about the impact of the NHS, 5% of all the emissions in the UK can be associated with the health service. We employ 1.3 million people in it, and we work with 80,000 suppliers. So the opportunity is absolutely huge. And so what we've been doing as a team from a social value perspective is we've adopted the government's public procurement notice 0620. We've adopted all 5 themes. And when I did my introduction and talked about the central guidance we're giving, we're pushing out guidance to make sure that all of our procurements across the NHS, whether it's within NHS England or any of the trusts, there's 215 of those, that they incorporate net zero and social value goals within those. So I think it's similar points really. Huge impact, taking a holistic view, but trying to push it at the practical level through all procurements.
Okay, Shariat, public sector procurers, rather, I should say, why do they require social value in the tendering process? You're from Birmingham City Council, one of the largest councils in Europe, but tell us specifically about the tendering process and why it's required there.
Okay, there are different aspects to this. There is a legal requirement according to the Social Value Act, but I think more importantly, it is a need, and that need is very evident in the disparity in our society. We can all see that we all have access to the data of index of multiple deprivation and life expectancy difference between the worst and the best, most disadvantaged and most affluent areas being around 10 years. And that drives the political agenda. We have a Labour-led council, and they are really clear about social value and what they want on it. And when I say, how do I know if it's worked? They say when the map changes, because there's a map of disadvantage, and they say when that changes, then I know that it's working. So it is a requirement from many different aspects, and it's really clear that requirement is there. But how does the council within its limits affect that? Obviously, we have a big spend, and that is one way to do it. So that is how we put it into procurement. But also we need to be aware that the private sector also want to make a difference, not just because of the stick of procurement, but also with the carrot of their social place in society. So it is not always, it's not a contradiction. We can work together to maximize this.
Well, we'll talk more about the positive impacts, something I think you just touched on there in just a second. But I just want to ask Charlene about social value being traditionally a localized benefit and tied certainly into a physical delivery in a physical place. So how do you go about enabling that social value delivery in a national framework agreement, or indeed an agreement for services?
Yeah, it's not easy. It is traditionally social value. You think of things like a construction project. So building a school, the construction company may look at building some playground or installing some playground equipment or something additionally to the actual construction project itself. It's very easy to see that link, or local jobs, employing local subcontractors. It's easy to see that link with the localized agenda. But with national agreements, it's obviously harder to find that localized element. With services where there's not actually any physical delivery, sometimes it's hard to even think, where would you begin? What social value is relevant to that? So it can involve a bit of creativity on the procurement department's sort of on their part to actually think, what social value can we extract here? Some agreements that CCS have got huge volumes of very transactional spend. So thinking like our cloud services, our technology products and things like that. There's lots of goods and lots of services sometimes being bought. The spend in the individual contracts is quite small. But when you look at that bigger picture, the spend is huge. So we should expect to get something in terms of benefits through that spend. It's taxpayers' money at the end of the day. We want to make sure that every pound we spend is delivering good for the nation. So it is sometimes thinking about what can we do step back at the agreement level. Is there anything that we can work with suppliers to look at? So thinking about, we have done some work with trade bodies and trade industries in certain sectors. In our marketing and communications team, we work with ISBA and with trade bodies to understand how actually, as buyers in the public sector, can we help improve the mental health and well-being of employees in that industry. So if you think about advertising contracts, instead of saying, I want the moon on a stick yesterday, please, creative agency, actually thinking, can we set realistic deadlines, realistic budgets, stop putting the pressure on the employees of our suppliers to make it a better place for them to work and to improve their mental health and well-being, which then reduces impact on NHS services and things like that further down the line. We can do things like that with our automated, or with our AI agreements. We've looked at how we can address some of the inclusion and diversity issues in terms of facial recognition technology. There's a disproportionate impact on people with certain backgrounds because the technology doesn't have a representative sample. So we're working with the suppliers in that industry to say, what can we do to improve that? So there are things we can do, and sometimes it is a case of us enabling the customers and the users of our agreements to actually to see that benefit, but potentially in a national agreement with services particularly, we may take a step back and go, what can we do? Is there knowledge transfer we can look at? So digital skills gap. We have large technology spend. Can we work with industry to address that and break it down into accessible chunks for users of the agreements to access, but with that wider view of how does this all fit together? So it can involve a lot of creativity. We have to make sure, obviously, that we're asking suppliers for something that's relevant to the contract. So it can't just be something completely unrelated in the name of social value. It has to comply with the procurement regulations. We do have to make sure it's relevant and proportionate to the contract. But a little bit of creativity, talking to the supplier markets, talking to the users of the agreements, we can find that sweet spot of what's achievable.
I like that phrase, creativity, because it covers so much, doesn't it, as you've just outlined, and it really is about that, isn't it? Rachel, I know we talked to, well, certainly Charlene mentioned there about the professionals working within procurement, but I just wondered about the power they have to influence social responsibility. It is huge, isn't it?
They've got way more power than they think they do as well to really have an impact in this space. And it's that day-to-day decision making that has impact here, and those small decisions that possibly you don't realize what they do to social value as well. And Charlene touched on some important things around how you practice your purchasing and how you make those decisions and put pressure here and there. And it's those small things that do really make a difference here. And for me, you can never start talking about social value early enough in procurement, right from the get-go. Even before you've got that RFP that you are replying to, if you put across the standards of your business and how important social value is, it becomes the theme for your interaction as a procurement professional into your dealings as well. And realistically, the way we have to think about it is when you're dealing with suppliers, let's say, it's the inability to earn a stable wage down the supply chain that really has an impact here. And as procurement professionals, you influence that. You influence in the way that you buy how someone who works for that supplier can earn a stable wage. And think about that. Humanize your job. Think about how your day-to-day decisions have an impact on people. Then it starts to make you feel a little bit different. And you might not chase so hard for that short lead time because of what it could be doing to the workforce. And it'll just change your perspective a little bit.
So they have the power, and I know, Mark, that's certainly something the NHS has made a priority, fighting climate change. That's a huge theme for the organisation, and I'm guessing a lot of what Charlene and Rachel have said rings true with you. That's exactly what you've been putting into practice, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, we've put an emphasis on fighting climate change because the kind of stats that I mentioned before, the kind of impact we have, but obviously the other areas of social value are still as important. And so what we've done through the kind of central guidance that we're providing nationally is that we put step-by-step advice out there for procurement people to be able to look at the procurement, look at the product, look at the service that they're about to buy, and think about what is appropriate from the social value model for those procurements. So it could be modern slavery is one area that's more important than climate change, depending on the product or service that they're buying. And so we're keeping it flexible enough for them to make that decision themselves, because ultimately we can't be involved with every single procurement that happens across the NHS. But yeah, the slight change of direction is to ensure that net zero is always included, not on its own, but as part of a suite of criteria that goes into procurement, because there is always an opportunity to reduce the carbon emissions of a product or service that is being purchased. So yeah.
And certainly something we're all living with, isn't it? And we're hearing that message time and time again. Chariot, I just wondered, what, in your opinion, makes a good bid?
Okay, so having worked on the other side of the transaction, also, I think in a good bid, the bidder needs to first of all show that they understand the priorities of the customer. So whoever you are bidding to and whatever you are bidding for, understand what their priorities are. So NHS at the central level will have one set of priorities, which they actually convey either at the bidding stage within the tender or at their corporate level. They will say, these are our priorities. Just read those, understand those, and show that you understand that. And then target your activity to address those priorities. And this will all be very clear in the tender, if it is a well-written tender, that under this tender we are, because it's relevant, as Mark says, to this particular procurement project, we are asking you to look mainly at employment, but also we want some environment as well. And in Birmingham City Council, we subweight our priorities at tender stage. So we say we want 30% import. We give 30% importance to employment, 20% to local procurement, 50% whatever to green and sustainable priorities, and then make your bid relevant to those. And also, there is a danger of over-promising. Make it realistic and show that you can deliver. Because social value has become more and more important in the tendering process, there is a risk that bidders will over-promise, and we will pick those up and challenge them. But it's a sign of social value maturing, I think, when that happens. So a good bid needs to show that they understand the dynamics of the organization and respond to the priorities of the buyer, and show previous experience if you have.
And I like the note of caution you say there about not over-promising. I guess that's probably, well, it can be forgiven, can't it, in many cases, because people are trying to do their best in order to actually secure that contract, aren't they?
But sometimes it is plainly impossible.
Okay.
To create 200 jobs for a £500,000 contract is clearly
not going to happen. Yeah, no, fair enough. Okay. I know all of you have mentioned about the benefits, and some of you have touched on the consequences as well. But I just wondered about social value in procurement being profitable and good for a business, and why it would be so. Rachel, let's start with you, please, on that. What's your response to that?
Of course, yeah. I think this agenda is way more commercially beneficial than people have understood to date, and sometimes it's not always the priority of the things that are commercially profitable can take lead. But I think that's shifting. Our perspectives is shifting, and we see where though you might not be able to always quantify it specifically, social value is a cost saver because it can save you from quite a bad reputational damage, perhaps, or it's going to save you money in the long run. But we are also now seeing investors are changing their approaches and where they're putting their money, and there is value now in having a social agenda, and it is going to make you look more beneficial, and therefore your long-term commercial rewards are greater. We're also seeing businesses' share prices increase where they do have a strong social agenda. So we're really pushing that with the businesses that we work with, and we get really close to the procurement professionals in the way that we engage with businesses, because just in the way we were talking about bids, we want them to shout about their partnership with someone like Slave Free Alliance. It gives them a USP as well. Yeah. And it's important that procurement professionals can talk about that agenda confidently. So we have to have them engaged on it, and it can be a real commercial benefit then.
Charlene, what are your thoughts about this?
I think Rachel's right. It definitely can work to an organization's advantage to have strong social value. I I think not just commercially, though. I think when you think about how to attract and retain the best staff, I think a lot of people now are increasingly looking at an organization's CSR, ESG policies to understand, is this work for? And if you have strong, meaningful social value provisions, you're that kind of organization that's proactively looking to not just do more, but do better, you will attract and retain the best staff. And then you have innumerable benefits of having the best staff in your organization. You're not having the cost implications of a high staff turnover and that staff churn. If you're getting people that are staying for longer and are invested and committed in your organization as well, you've got countless benefits that stem from that as well, which then will probably help you be even more compelling when you're looking at bidding for public sector contracts, that you have got that really committed and focused outlook in terms of what additional can we do, what more can we do for you. It's not just about how much, but how well we can do.
And it is something organizations are being judged by more and more, aren't they? Not just by potential employees, but by the public as a whole.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've all seen stories of greenwashing. We've all seen stories where it's gone horrendously wrong for organizations, because as consumers, we're all a lot more aware of the implications of what we're buying. We're aware of the climate impact. We're aware of things like garment factory issues in the fast fashion supply chain. We're aware of these things as consumers in our day-to-day lives. So we're now seeing a lot of people now have got one eye on what's happening further down the supply chain, more than we've ever done before. Being a procurement professional is increasingly complex now because there is that visibility and there is that awareness. And a lot of the policies that have come out over the years, looking at our modern slavery prevention policies, looking at the carbon net zero policies, looking at the social value policies, they are all driving towards a greater awareness of what's happening further down the supply chain and how that impacts how what we buy and how we buy has an impact, not just locally, nationally, internationally. So I think there's definitely opportunities for suppliers who are aware and conscious of how they operate, and who do it well, to stand out when they're tendering.
Absolutely. Chariot, what is the future trajectory, in your view, for social value?
I am biased, of course, so I will say that I think as long as we have that need in society, that disparity, I think this will remain, and we see more and more political fodder coming to social value. It may be called different things like leveling up and other things, but the need is clear. And with 350 million pounds worth of buying power, there is huge amount of leverage that we can, and we are, I think, 10 years on, I think we're still at the start of this journey. I think this will shape the economy going forward. And I point to all the marketing material coming out of businesses. Look at the content of social aspirations or environmental aspirations within those communication messages.
Yeah, because it does endear us, the public, doesn't it, to those organisations when we know that they have that social value conscience as well. And we saw that during the pandemic. Mark, NHS, biggest, well, you gave the figures at the beginning of this conversation, a huge employer, and certainly a national institution. What's your thoughts on this going forward? Because you're coming from a perspective of an organisation that we all know and love.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a sort of kind of what does success look like theme that we talk about internally quite a bit. And I think, we are at the beginning of this, but I'd say that it's one of the key things is to make sure that when we're looking at procurements, the stuff that's being chosen to be put into contracts is meaningful. It's appropriate, it's measurable, and we can actually start to report on some of the benefits of that. And I think it's to that earlier point around making sure that it's not a tick box exercise and we're not just seeing greenwash from suppliers. So I think that's where I'd like to see it go. So ask me again in 2-3 years. Let's see how we're getting on.
Okay, we've got about just 3 minutes left to go. So I just want to ask all of you very quickly, and you touched on it there, Mark, about success in a few years' time. But say we were 3 years on, what do you think success should look like, or what would you like it to look like?
I think for
Mark,
me,
sorry,
sorry.
carry on. Let's
Sure.
go around the room. No, that's absolutely fine. That's fine.
Success for me is really down to those procurement professionals making those day-to-day decisions, seeing their role not just as transactional, but very much a human, social role as well, and just having that mindset shift. And it's happening, but to see that more and more. And there's so many learnings from the private sector that can come into the public sector. So just making sure that translates, I think, is really important.
Okay. Charlene?
For me, it'd be about public procurers and suppliers having meaningful engagement from the very outset of looking at a contract life cycle. You know, the strategy stage, when you're setting your procurement strategy, having conversations with the market to understand where can we go next? How can we continue to progress the social value agenda? Not just tacking it on to a procurement at the end because it's a box that we have to tick to meet a policy, but, you know, having those meaningful conversations, having that feedback loop. Probably, I would say, you know, a bit more maturity around reporting and evaluation and measurement of social value, because I think nationally there are very, very big differences in terms of how different public sector organizations measure and report social value. I'd like to see that whole agenda have matured a bit further by then, and a sort of more consistent way of understanding what good looks like. Have we done good? At the moment, yeah, if you ask, we'll all probably have different answers at the minute, I think. So I'd like to see us all have a more consistent view of that in a few years' time.
Okay, can you just expand just very quickly a little bit more on that? Do you want it to be standardized? It sounds to me like it's a little bit hit and miss at the moment from what you're saying.
I don't think standardized, because there are so many different nuances in social value and so many different looking at measuring social value, whether you want to look at qualitative figures or quantitative figures, qualitative sort of text-based responses, understanding the impact. Some of it takes time to understand. And I think certainly in the public sector, as the social value PPN came in, we're getting to grips with that, but it's still very, it depends on the individual who's looking at it and how they feel that social value can be measured. So not standardization, but a little bit more of a better and deeper understanding of how we should be looking to measure social value going forward, because it's sort of a free-for-all at times, I think, at the minute.
As we are, yeah, indeed. Thank you. Shariat, what about you? What does success look like if you were to see it in 3 years' time? What would it be?
Okay, ultimately, it's the map of deprivation changing. But if it's a shorter time period, then I'll stay with Rachel's definition, just for the procurers to understand that culture shift, for procurers to understand that their decisions have impact on people's lives day to day.
Absolutely. And Mark, we'll leave the last word to you, please.
Well, I think it's that. I think you just pointed out there. So one of our big focuses is around trying to shift the demand within the system. So it's trying to link together all of the great work that sustainability professionals are doing across the NHS, which is a growing number of people, and linking that with procurement to make them realise the power that they have. I think, as Rachel was pointing out earlier. So how we measure that one, I don't know, but that's a great goal, I think, to have.
Okay, well, you left us on a little bit of a cliffhanger there, but we have to leave it there, sadly, because our time's run out. I want to thank you all for joining us. So Mark, Shariat, Charlene and Rachel, thank you very much for being with us today and for sharing your thoughts. We do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So a fantastic panel to start the day off with, a great conversation, and I hope it's given you something to think about. We are now, though, going to have a quick break and give you a chance to digest some of the conversation that's been covered so far. Now, if you do have the chance, please engage with the speed networking opportunity. You never know, you could perhaps be talking about some of the points that you've already heard this morning. We've got lots more to come throughout the day, but for now, enjoy the break, and I will see you back here at 20 to 11. Enjoy.